In 2017, Britain was struck by a series of terror attacks, the most deadly to take place on British soil for more than a decade. 5 attacks killed more than 30 people and left hundreds injured. The largest of those attacks took place here in Manchester at the stadium behind me, where a concert was targeted. Well, at the end of such a deadly year, we assess the physical and psychological impacts those attacks have had on the UK. This is what a city on high alert looks like.
Can you step back?
Move back!
Step back! Move back! Move back! Not for your own safety! Move back!
Full-blown panic. This reaction to what later turned out to be a false alarm, a revealing illustration of a country on edge.
I either need you off the streets or into empty buildings, and we need you to...
It came at the end of a year that saw Britain hit by 5 separate terror attacks. On March 22nd, a man later identified as Khalid Massoud drove through pedestrians before jumping out of the car and attacking people with a knife. It left 5 people dead. Another attack hit London on June 3rd. As people were out enjoying dinner in the bustling London Borough Market.
And suddenly we saw the security from Borough Markets. They lock the door, duck and cover. There's a terrorist incident happening. We looked out on opposite in the restaurant over here. There's a guy who's throwing stuff, and it turns out he was bravely throwing at these assailants trying to save a young woman's life. We retreat into the back room, get people upstairs. There's a pregnant woman with us who we got a quiet spot. So I go back to my table to get my keys and my phone, assuming we might have to leave by another exit, and see a guy leave the restaurant just here, black and blue, with his neck slit.
The response was swift. Police swept the area, targeting the 3 assailants and killing them.
We left through these streets and out through Borough Market. And what I remember is not really leaving as much as the kind of footsteps that we took as you saw somebody's kicked off shoe, some blood on the floor, a wallet that was lost, someone's glasses, and then a woman who was face down with 6 paramedics around her.
The first responders in the UK have been praised for their actions in response to these events. People like Dr. Majid, who was on call at Manchester Children's Hospital the night of the biggest terror attack in the UK this year.
So the injuries we saw aren't the kind of injuries that we see on a day-to-day basis here in the UK, and certainly not in children. Most of the injuries were war-type injuries, so the kind of things that you would see from, they were essentially shrapnel injuries and blast injuries.
The target this time was an Ariana Grande concert. Those attending included hundreds of young fans. 22 people died in that bombing, carried out by Salman Abedi. Manchester, though, hit back with a strong show of defiance. Diverse communities were tested again when far-right extremist Darren Osborne drove into a crowd of worshippers outside Finsbury Park Mosque. As the nature of the threat has changed, so have the measures put into place to tackle it. These bollards, now installed in London and Manchester, stop vehicles reaching pedestrian areas. For now, across the UK, families and communities are trying to put a violent year behind them. But for those directly affected, that's not going to be so straightforward.
The physical injuries can last a while, but the psychological injuries and impact will last a lot longer. And our focus now is on the holistic rehabilitation of these children. And so some of my colleagues are focused very heavily on that. I think that night will remain in all of our memories for our living memories. It's not something that we can forget.
Well, in our report there, we assessed the physical and psychological impact of those 5 terror attacks on the UK this year. And to discuss that a little bit further, I'm joined by 2 guests. We have Abu Sundus, who is a member of the Libyan community here where we are in Manchester, and Cihangir Mohammed, a counter-terror expert. So I want to come to you first, Abu Sundus. Here in Manchester, we saw the largest of the terror attacks in 2017 taking place. Salman Abedi, the 22-year-old man who was behind it, was a member of the Libyan community. In the wake of a lot of these attacks, the question that's been asked is, someone should have recognised something, identified something. Could more have been done? Have lessons been learned?
Of course, more could have been done, and I think there is a lot that we don't know, even to this date, which has a lot of people claim that someone has reported Salman Abedi to the authorities, but nothing was done. However, as a Libyan community, we were shocked at the beginning, and we went into denial. And we tried our best to come to terms, given the limited resources and abilities that are available to us as a community.
The problem is that the elderly Muslims from these communities no longer have much influence on the younger people, because their politics, for them, seems to have failed. The Arab Spring seems to have failed, elections seems to have failed, so they are turning to something else for a solution. And
Right, can I just jump in there? Abdi Sundus, that's your job then, isn't it, as a community leader, to have identified that something's going wrong with the rhetoric and sound the alarm. Do you think that's fair?
I think it's not just one reason. We can't really say this is it. I think it's a number of reasons. I think it's the education system. We have to visit the education system. Why does someone who has grown up in this country, a young boy, who went through the primary school, high school, college, and university, would blow up people who could have been his classmates? Why?
Going forward into 2018, have we learnt enough lessons from 2017 when it comes to counter-terrorism and measures that we should take to protect the country?
well, obviously there are always lessons to be learnt. Some of these people were on the spotlight, on the radar for whatever reason. They weren't picked up, or the intelligence wasn't good enough to recognise that these people posed a threat.
I think I'm optimistic that we will move forward, we will find solutions. I think it has made us more closer together as a community.
Well, from community leaders to the security services here in the UK, everyone is again looking at their actions and responses so that if and when another attack happens, the country is better prepared. Sara, Firth, TRT World, Manchester.